The galaxy never forgave humanity. The Galactic Council had judged them as dangerous, too ambitious, too unpredictable. They said humans could never be trusted, that their hunger for power would one day threaten every star. And so, with one final vote, the Council declared exile. Humanity was stripped of its rights, its colonies seized, its fleets dismantled. Under armed escort, the last surviving human ships were pushed to the dark edge of the galaxy, far beyond safe trade routes, far beyond any hope of return. For the Council, it was over. Humanity would vanish into silence, forgotten by history. The alien leaders celebrated, believing they had ended a problem before it became too great. To them, humanity was a small species, weak compared to mighty empires. They thought exile was a kindness, better than destruction. They thought humans would fade away like dust among the stars. But they were wrong. For the humans, exile was not the end. It was only the beginning. Life on the edge of the galaxy was cruel. The stars here were dim and lifeless, the planets frozen, the air thin, the resources scarce. Many ships broke down, unable to repair themselves. Many colonies failed within months. Hunger spread, sickness followed, and hope became thin like smoke. Entire families perished, ships were lost in the void, and the survivors whispered in the dark. Perhaps the Council was right, perhaps humans were not meant to last. But not all gave up. Among the survivors rose voices of strength, leaders who refused to bend. They told their people, "We were betrayed, but we are not broken. They cast us out, but we will endure. They think we are weak, but they will learn the truth." In hidden caves on dead moons, humans built shelters. In hollowed asteroids, they lit fires to forge tools. The young grew up hearing stories of Earth, the lost home, and of the betrayal that cast them out. In their hearts burned anger, and with anger came resolve. The Council thought they had buried humanity in the cold dark. Instead, they had planted a seed. That seed was growing. Years passed. The galaxy forgot. Aliens moved on with wars, trade, and politics. To them, humanity was just a memory, an old story told to children. Do not be like the humans, or you too will be exiled. But out there, far beyond the maps, the exiles were learning. They scavenged wrecks of old ships. They studied broken machines. They cracked codes and secrets from alien devices. Piece by piece, they built again. In the silence of the void, they discovered strength. The humans remembered every insult, every betrayal. The memory of exile became a fire that could not be put out. Generations grew with that fire in their veins. Children were taught that the galaxy had abandoned them, and one day, the galaxy would pay. Some nights, when the stars burned cold, the elders would whisper of revenge. One day, they said, we will return. One day, the Council will see what we have become. But not all dreams were of revenge. Many only dreamed of survival. For in those early years, survival itself was the greatest war. Famine killed thousands. Alien raiders discovered human outposts and burned them for sport. Disease spread in the crowded habitats of asteroid colonies. Humanity teetered on the edge of extinction. Yet even then, something unbroken lived inside them. When one colony fell, another rose. When a ship was destroyed, its parts were gathered and rebuilt into something new. No loss was final. No defeat was forever. In exile, humans learned patience. They learned silence. They learned how to live in the shadows. Among them rose a leader, a woman named Admiral Kalen. She had once been a fleet commander before the exile, and now she became a symbol of survival. She told her people, "The Council thinks we are gone. Let them think it. Their ignorance will be our weapon. We will rise not in the open, but in secret. We will build where they cannot see, and when the day comes, we will return stronger than they ever imagined." Her words became law. Her vision became the path. Slowly, secretly, the scattered survivors united under her command. Colonies once divided began to share food, ships, knowledge. Together they became more than survivors. They became the first sparks of a hidden empire. Still, the Council remained blind. Reports of strange signals from the edge of the galaxy were dismissed. Rumors of human survivors were laughed away. To the alien rulers, humanity was a story, long ended. But in the darkness, the exiles built. In caverns of ice, they forged weapons. In the shells of dead moons, they trained soldiers. In the silence between stars, they tested engines faster and stronger than before. The galaxy had cast them into shadow, but it was in shadow that they grew most dangerous. The humans knew one truth. One day, they would return. And when they returned, they would not come as beggars or refugees. They would come as conquerors. The Council had exiled humanity to die. Instead, they had created their greatest enemy. And though no alien yet knew it, the countdown had already begun. Humanity was not gone. Humanity was waiting. Humanity was rising. The exile had begun with fire and despair, but the years that followed were worse. Life at the edge of the galaxy was not life at all. It was survival against an endless storm. The humans were few, their ships old, their supplies thin. Every day was a fight against hunger, cold, and death. Entire colonies vanished without a sound, swallowed by failing systems or alien raiders who saw the exiles as prey. On barren worlds, the soil refused to grow crops, the air was poison, and water was rare as gold. On broken stations, families huddled in metal shells, listening to the groan of failing engines and praying the oxygen would not run out. Children cried for food that did not exist. Elders gave up their rations so the young might live. Hope was fading, and many whispered that the Council had been right, that humans would die here in the void. But even as despair grew, so too did something else. Hardship forged strength. The weak perished, but those who survived became harder than steel. A new generation was born in the shadows, a generation that had never seen Earth, never known peace, never trusted the galaxy. For them, struggle was normal and survival was victory. They learned to fight with nothing. They learned to turn wreckage into weapons, scraps into machines, ruins into homes. Where others would break, they endured. Their leaders knew the truth. Survival was not enough. If humanity only clung to life, they would be hunted down one by one until nothing remained. They needed more. They needed unity, strength, and a dream greater than survival. That dream was whispered in the dark, passed from ship to ship, colony to colony. It was a dream of return. Not return as refugees begging for mercy, but return as conquerors who would never be exiled again. But to reach that dream, they first had to endure the endless struggle. Alien raiders struck again and again, thinking the exiles weak. At first they were right. Many colonies burned, many ships were lost, and many people died. But each attack taught the humans something new. They studied their enemies, learned their tactics, stole their weapons. Soon the hunters found themselves, becoming the hunted. Small human crews began to set traps in asteroid fields, striking raider ships and vanishing like ghosts. They took alien technology, dismantled it, rebuilt it into something new, something human. With every stolen engine and every captured weapon, their power grew. Still, the struggle did not end. Disease swept through the colonies, carried by cramped air systems and poor supplies. Medicine was scarce, and many died. But human engineers learned to create new cures from alien plants, new machines from alien parts, and slowly the plague was beaten back. Hunger remained a greater enemy than any alien, but even hunger taught them. Farmers learned to grow food. in places where no food should grow, inside caves lit by artificial suns, in hydroponic tanks hidden in old mining stations. Slowly, piece by piece, the exiles learned to bend the hostile edge of the galaxy to their will. Among them, Admiral Kalen remained a guiding star. She carried the weight of their survival on her shoulders, and though the years aged her eyes still burned with unbroken fire. She told her people, "This is not the end of humanity. This is the trial that will make us stronger. Every struggle we face is a lesson. Every loss is a warning. Every victory, no matter how small, is a step toward the future. Endure, my people. Endure, and we will rise again." Her words kept them alive when hope was thin. Her vision gave them purpose when death seemed certain. She united the scattered survivors into something greater. Colonies that once fought over, scraps began to share, to trade, to join forces. Ships, once alone in the void, became part of hidden fleets. Step by step, the struggle began to turn into strength. But still, the galaxy believed they were gone. To the Council, humanity had vanished into silence. Alien diplomats laughed at the idea that humans might survive. They called them a dead race, a warning story, a reminder of the cost of defiance. Yet in the cold dark, the truth was very different. Humanity was not dead. Humanity was bleeding, yes. Humanity was suffering, yes. But humanity was learning, and the galaxy had no idea what was coming. One day, a patrol ship from a minor alien empire stumbled across a hidden human colony. The aliens expected weakness, expected to crush the exiles easily. But what they found was different. The humans fought back with ferocity, their weapons crude but deadly, their tactics ruthless. The alien ship was destroyed, its wreckage hidden, its crew buried in silence. For the first time, the exiles had not only survived an attack, they had triumphed. The news spread like fire among the hidden colonies. For the first time in years, the humans felt not only hope, but pride. They could fight back. They could win. From that moment, the struggle took on new meaning. It was no longer only about survival. It was about preparation. Every raid was a lesson. Every loss was a teacher. Every victory was a promise of the future. The humans were changing. The galaxy thought exile would break them. But exile was forging them into something new. Their struggle was their crucible. And from that crucible, an empire would be born. And though the galaxy still laughed, and the Council still slept in comfort, the shadows whispered with growing power. Humanity was not finished. Humanity was not broken. Humanity was preparing. The struggle had forged humanity into survivors, but survival alone was not enough. If they were to return to the galaxy, they needed more than courage and unity. They needed power, real power. And so, deep in the shadows of forgotten systems, humanity began to build what would later be called the Hidden Forge. At first, it was nothing more than scattered workshops in asteroids and caves carved into dead moons. Small teams of engineers and scientists worked with scraps, repairing what little they had. But slowly, their vision grew. The exiles realized they could not rely only on old human machines. Those were outdated, weak, and easy to detect. Instead, they had to create something new. To do that, they studied every piece of alien wreckage they had captured during their long struggle. Engines, weapons, armor, even simple tools. Nothing was wasted. Every screw, every wire, every shard of alien steel was taken apart, studied, and rebuilt with human hands. What began as scavenging became mastery. The humans learned how alien drives bent space, how plasma weapons burned through shields, how stealth coatings could hide a ship from scanners. And once they understood, they improved. They made ships faster than their enemies, weapons sharper than their foes, armor tougher than anyone had seen. In the hollow of an asteroid belt, massive caverns glowed with the fires of industry. Hammers rang, machines roared, sparks lit the darkness. Hidden from every eye, the exiles were building fleets. Entire moons were turned into shipyards. Their surfaces barren and lifeless, while deep inside, secret cities and factories thrived. Even the stars themselves became allies, their light hiding the trails of human construction. But building in the shadows was not simple. Resources were scarce, and every mistake risked discovery. There were times when food was sacrificed so that steel could be smelted, when colonists starved so ships could fly. Yet no one complained. Every human knew what was at stake. They were not only building machines, they were building their future, their survival, their revenge. Admiral Kalen's voice guided them like a beacon. "We are the forgotten," she told them, "but we will not remain forgotten. The galaxy thinks us dead, but we are alive. The galaxy thinks us weak, but we are stronger than ever. And when our time comes, the stars themselves will tremble." Her words were carved into walls, whispered in training halls, repeated by soldiers and workers alike. They became more than orders, they became faith. Children grew up watching ships rise from secret docks, learning that every bolt they tightened, every panel they welded, was another step toward humanity's return. The hidden forge became a living symbol, proof that exile had not broken them, that the struggle had not been in vain. Still, danger always loomed. Once, a council scout ship wandered too close. For a moment, humanity's secret stood at risk. But the exiles were ready. Silent warships emerged from the shadows, cloaked in darkness, engines whispering like ghosts. They surrounded the scout and destroyed it before a single signal escaped. The wreckage was erased, the ashes scattered among asteroids. The council never knew what had happened, but among the humans it was a warning. Secrecy was survival. No mistake could be allowed. For years, the forge grew in silence. Every weapon they built was hidden. Every ship was cloaked. Entire fleets existed without the galaxy knowing. Some ships were built not for battle, but for learning. Experimental vessels testing new technologies beyond anything the Council imagined. Rumors spread among the humans of engines that could leap across light years, of weapons that could pierce the strongest shields, of armor that could turn aside plasma like rain. The truth of these whispers remained hidden, but one thing was certain. The Forge was creating something the galaxy had never seen before. Yet even as they built, humanity remembered the lessons of exile. They knew arrogance had led to their downfall once, and they would not make the same mistake again. So they built in patience, always in secret, always cautious. They did not rush to war. They did not reveal themselves. They waited. For every weapon forged, they asked, "Is it enough?" For every ship completed, they asked, "Will it survive?" They prepared for the day when the Council would discover them, because discovery was inevitable. And when that day came, they would not face exile again. They would face war. Among the workers, the soldiers trained. In hollow chambers carved from moons, men and women fought in silence, practicing tactics against enemies who did not yet know they existed. They learned to strike fast, to vanish without a trace, to fight not as a scattered race, but as a united empire. Their commanders told them, "We do not fight only for ourselves. We fight for every child who starved in exile, for every family who was lost in the void, for every world that betrayed us. We fight for humanity." And they believed. The hidden forge was not only steel and fire. It was will. It was unity. It was the heart of a people who refused to die. And as the years passed, the forge became stronger, larger, more dangerous. The galaxy still thought humanity was dead, still told stories of their fall. But in the shadows, the truth was very different. Humanity was alive, humanity was armed, humanity was preparing, and soon, very soon, The galaxy would learn what had been born in the dark. The hidden forge was no longer a secret workshop. It had grown into something vast, something alive, something far greater than anyone had dreamed. What began as scattered colonies fighting for scraps had now become a silent network of worlds and stations bound by loyalty and purpose. For decades, the humans had hidden in the shadows, working, building, uniting, and now, at last, their silence was bearing fruit. In the deep void, fleets of sleek warships floated unseen, their black hulls swallowing light, their engines silent, ghosts. They were faster than any alien vessel, stronger than any council ship, forged from years of stolen knowledge and human ingenuity. On dead moons, soldiers trained in vast caverns, their drills echoing in the stone as they prepared for battles yet to come. They were not armies of desperate survivors anymore. They were legions, disciplined, united, and hungry. Humanity had stopped being scattered tribes of exiles. They had become an empire. But it was an empire of shadows, a secret that no one in the galaxy yet knew. Their leaders no longer spoke of only survival. They spoke of destiny. Admiral Kalen, now older but unbroken, stood before her people and declared, "We are no longer the forgotten. We are no longer the hunted. We are no longer weak. We are the Shadow Empire, born of fire, born of betrayal, born of exile. The galaxy does not see us, but one day it will. And on that day we will not return as outcasts. We will return as masters." Her words spread across every hidden colony, carried by whispers, by recordings, by symbols carved into walls. They became the heartbeat of the new empire. People who had once thought only of survival now lived for the dream of return. Children grew up swearing oaths not to the council, not to alien powers, but to humanity itself. Soldiers bled for it. Workers built for it. Leaders sacrificed for it. Every person knew they were part of something greater, yet still they kept their silence. The council still thought the humans gone, lost to the void, nothing but ash. Alien empires fought each other, traded, plotted, and laughed at the memory of the exiled species. But the Shadow Empire was growing in their blind spots, learning their secrets, charting their weaknesses. Human spies disguised their signals, intercepted transmissions, studied every shift of council politics. They learned who the strong were, who the weak were, who could be broken first when the time came. But the Shadow Empire was not built only on warships and spies. It was built on unity. Where once human colonies had fought each other for scraps, now they stood as one. Hunger was shared, labor was shared, knowledge was shared. No one colony stood alone, no one ship drifted alone. Humanity had learned the hardest lesson of exile, that only together could they survive, and only together could they rise. Slowly, in the silence of decades, they had turned survival into strength, strength into power, and power into empire. And yet, the galaxy still did not know, or perhaps it refused to believe. Rumors began to spread in the border systems. Whispers of ghost ships seen at the edge of scanners, alien raiders who vanished into the dark, fleets that disappeared without trace. Some said it was nothing more than superstition. Others feared that something hidden lived in the void. The council dismissed it all as nonsense. They had cast out the humans long ago. Surely they could not have survived, let alone grown stronger. Surely they were dust. But the council's denial did not change reality. In the hidden places, the Shadow Empire continued to rise. Fleets were tested in secret drills, weapons were refined, soldiers were hardened. Human leaders waited, watching, for the moment when secrecy would end and revelation would begin. For though they had grown powerful, they were not yet ready to challenge the entire galaxy. They knew patience was their greatest weapon. Strike too soon, and the council might crush them with numbers. Wait too long, and humanity might rot in silence. They walked the line between caution and ambition, always preparing, always watching. And in the meantime, they sharpened their claws. Alien raiders who once preyed on the weak now vanished without a trace, their ships swallowed by human. Fleets, their technology stripped, their crews never heard from again. Small powers on the edge of the galaxy who dared to probe too far into the void often disappeared, their names forgotten, their systems wiped clean of records. To the galaxy, it was mystery. To humanity, it was preparation. Still, among the leaders of the Shadow Empire, one question burned brighter than all others. When should they reveal themselves? To wait forever was impossible. To remain hidden forever was weakness. And so, deep in the heart of the Empire, plans were made, secret councils met, and strategies were drawn. Some argued for patience, that humanity should build more fleets, more weapons, more soldiers before making their presence known. Others argued that the time was near, that the galaxy's arrogance was their greatest shield, and that striking while the enemy believed them gone would guarantee victory. Admiral Kalen listened to both sides, her sharp eyes never wavering. She knew the choice would shape the future of all her people. For now, she kept the Shadow Empire hidden, but her heart whispered that the day was coming. The day when secrecy would end, when the galaxy would learn the truth. And when that day came, there would be no turning back. The Shadow Empire was ready. Humanity was ready. The galaxy had banished them to die, but instead it had forged an empire in silence, in darkness, in blood. And soon the stars would shake with the sound of their return. For decades, the Shadow Empire had remained hidden, its fleets growing stronger, its soldiers sharper, its leaders patient. Humanity had become a ghost in the dark, a rumor whispered in fear, but the galaxy still refused to believe. The Council told itself that the exiles were long dead, that no species so small could survive without trade or allies, that the silence of the void was proof of extinction. But silence can be deceiving, and soon the galaxy would learn the truth. The first sign came not from a grand war, but from a simple mistake. A patrol ship belonging to a minor alien empire drifted too far into the dark systems near the edge. Its crew expected nothing. For years, patrols had come and gone without trouble, scanning empty worlds and lifeless moons. But this time, they found something. Their scanners detected faint energy readings from an asteroid belt, patterns too organized to be natural. Excitement filled the alien crew, for they thought they had discovered an abandoned ruin or perhaps a forgotten mining base. But as they drew closer, shapes moved among the asteroids, black shadows sliding against the stars. Before the aliens could even send a signal, the shadows came alive. Human warships emerged, sleek and silent, their hulls darker than space itself, their weapons already primed. In seconds, the patrol ship was surrounded. The aliens panicked, shouting warnings, trying to send messages back to their empire. But it was too late. The humans struck with terrifying precision. Energy beams cut through the alien vessel, tearing it apart before its distress call could escape. The wreckage burned briefly before being dragged into the asteroids and dismantled piece by piece. Nothing remained. No signal reached the galaxy, no record survived. The patrol had vanished as if it had never existed. For the Shadow Empire, this was not an accident. It was a test. For years, their fleets had trained in silence. Their weapons had been sharpened in secret. Now, for the first time, they had tasted battle against the galaxy again. And the result was absolute. The human commanders reported the success to Admiral Kalen, and though her face remained stern, her eyes revealed a spark of something more. The time of ghosts was ending. Humanity had returned to the battlefield. But even as the wreckage of the patrol ship was cleared, questions rose. Should they continue to hide, destroying quietly any who wandered too close? Or was it time to send a message, to let the galaxy know they had survived? The leaders debated fiercely, some urging patience, others demanding action. In the end, Kaelin gave her order: remain hidden, strike only when necessary, but prepare for more encounters. Because once a single ship had stumbled onto them, others would follow. And so, the Shadow Empire waited. It did not take long. A few months later, another alien vessel entered the same system, searching for the missing patrol. This time it was larger, armed, cautious. But it too never returned. Human fleets destroyed it in silence, erasing all trace. The aliens grew suspicious. When a third ship disappeared, whispers began to spread across the nearby sectors. Traders spoke of strange signals, of ghost fleets that appeared and vanished without a trace. Pirates told stories of ships that glided like shadows, weapons that cut through shields as if they were paper. No one dared to say the word human, but the fear was growing. The council dismissed the rumors, calling them nonsense, excuses for failed patrols and lost fleets. But doubt had been planted, and doubt is a dangerous seed. Meanwhile, within the Shadow Empire, the people felt something they had not felt in generations: hope and pride. They had not only survived exile, they had defeated the galaxy's hunters. For the first time, they knew they could stand against their enemies. Their children no longer whispered only of survival. Now they whispered of return. Across the hidden colonies, the story of the destroyed patrol ships spread like fire. Soldiers trained harder, workers built faster, leaders prepared. Strategies for wars that had not yet begun. They knew discovery was coming. They knew the council could not ignore the disappearances forever. But they were no longer afraid. They were ready. Then came the moment that changed everything. A council exploration fleet, larger and stronger than any before, entered the dark systems. It carried not only soldiers, but scientists, diplomats, and spies. Its mission was not only to investigate the missing ships, but also to confirm the truth of the rumors. The Shadow Empire watched from the shadows as the alien fleet scanned planets, searched asteroids, and grew closer to their hidden strongholds. This was no ordinary patrol. This was the Council's hand reaching into the dark. And this time, the humans made a choice. They would not simply destroy the intruders in silence. They would send a message. In the deep void, the Shadow Empire unleashed its fury. Warships rose from the darkness, engines flaring for the first time in open battle. They struck with precision, tearing through the Council fleet like wolves among sheep. Alien ships tried to fight back, but their weapons found nothing. The human vessels moved too fast, their armor too strong, their tactics too ruthless. Within hours, the Council fleet was destroyed, but humanity left survivors. A single crippled ship was allowed to escape, its crew carrying stories of what they had seen. Terrifying stories, stories of ships darker than night, of weapons that cut through fleets like blades, of voices declaring, "We are humanity. We were banished, but we are not dead. Remember us, for we have returned." That ship limped back to the Council, its crew trembling, their words disbelieved by many. But doubt spread faster than denial. The Council could laugh, they could dismiss, they could lie to themselves. But deep down, they knew the truth. Humanity was back, and the galaxy would never be the same. The Council was shaken. For years they had laughed at the idea of human survival. For years they had told themselves that the exiles were gone forever. But now a single broken ship had returned with a tale too wild to ignore. Its crew spoke of warships that moved like shadows, of weapons that pierced their shields with impossible strength, of voices that declared humanity's return. Many within the Council dismissed it as fear, madness, or lies, but others felt a cold weight in their hearts. They remembered the stubbornness of humanity, the way they had fought even when outnumbered, the way they had refused to bow even as they were cast into exile. Could it be true? Could the forgotten race have survived and grown strong in silence? The council argued endlessly. Some demanded investigation, others demanded denial, but while they hesitated, the Shadow Empire moved. Humanity had revealed a glimpse, not the whole truth, only enough to strike fear, enough to remind the galaxy that they were not dead. And that glimpse spread faster than fire. Traders whispered of human fleets haunting the edge of known space. Pirates told stories of ships that appeared from nothing, slaughtered entire bands, and vanished again. Merchants spoke of routes that were no longer safe, of entire convoys disappearing without trace. Every story was different, but every story carried the same shadow. The humans were back. And though the council tried to silence it, fear cannot be silenced. Meanwhile, within the Shadow Empire, the people stood taller than ever. For generations they had lived as ghosts, working in secret, fighting only to survive. But now the galaxy knew their name again, and the name was spoken with fear. It was only a glimpse, but it was enough. Children grew up chanting the words of Admiral Kalin. We were banished, but we are not gone. We were forgotten, but we did not forget. We were broken, but we are stronger than ever. Soldiers trained harder, knowing that soon they would face the galaxy not as shadows but as warriors. Workers labored faster, building ships and weapons with renewed fire. The exile had lasted long, but the end of silence was near. Humanity had stepped into the light, and there was no turning back. The Council at last sent fleets, not patrols, not scouts, but fleets meant for war. Dozens of ships armed with the finest weapons the Council could muster, crews drilled in battle, admirals chosen for their cunning. They entered the dark systems with confidence, telling themselves they would crush whatever lingered there, that they would show the galaxy there. Was no reason to fear, but what they found was terror. The human fleets waited in silence, cloaked against the stars, patient and ready. When the Council ships crossed the invisible line into Shadow Empire territory, the trap was sprung. Missiles screamed from the void, plasma beams cut across the darkness, and Council ships fell before they even understood they were under attack. The battle was swift and merciless. Alien weapons hammered against human armor, but they could not break it. Alien fleets maneuvered, as they had been trained, but the humans anticipated every move. Years of studying Council tactics had paid off. Every formation, every response, every counter had been prepared. The Council fleets were not fighting desperate exiles. They were fighting an empire that had been planning this moment for generations. When it was over, silence returned to the stars. Only wreckage remained. But once again, the humans allowed survivors to escape. And once again, the survivors carried tales back to the galaxy. This time, the stories were worse. They spoke of fleets that vanished into shadow, ships faster than light, weapons that burned through everything. They spoke of voices on open channels declaring, "We are humanity. You cast us out, but we endured. You thought us weak, but we grew strong. You thought us gone, but we have returned." The Council could no longer deny it. The galaxy could no longer laugh. Humanity had revealed itself, not fully, but enough to prove that it was alive, that it was powerful, that it was dangerous. Panic spread through the alien empires. Some demanded war, others begged for peace, but none could ignore the truth. The humans had survived exile, and what they had become in the shadows was more terrifying than anyone had imagined. In the great chambers of the Council, arguments raged. "We must destroy them now," shouted some, "before they grow stronger." But others shook their heads. "They are already stronger. We sent fleets and they did not return. If we fight, we may lose everything." Fear twisted every word, every decision. But humanity did not wait for the Council to decide. They struck again, not with silence this time, but with purpose. In a bold move, human fleets ambushed a major Council convoy near a trade route. This time they did not erase all evidence. Instead, they seized the ships, captured the crews, and left the wreckage where it could be found. And carved into the hull of every destroyed vessel was a single message, written in human language. "We are watching." The galaxy trembled. No longer whispers, no longer rumors. Humanity was back, and they wanted everyone to know it. Yet even in this revelation, they showed only a glimpse. Their fleets did not march openly. Their empire did not declare itself fully. They revealed just enough to spread terror, just enough to make every alien leader look over their shoulder, just enough to remind the galaxy that the forgotten exiles were now hunters. In the dark halls of the Shadow Empire, Admiral Kalen smiled. At last. Her people had waited for this moment for generations. Now the galaxy knew fear. Now the galaxy remembered humanity. But this was only the beginning. The glimpse was enough to shake the stars, but the full storm had yet to come. And, when it came, no one would be ready. The galaxy was no longer calm. Fear had spread like poison through every star system, carried by rumors, carried by broken fleets, carried by the whispers of survivors who had seen the impossible. For centuries, the Council had mocked humanity, as weak, as primitive, as gone. But now their fleets had vanished in the void, and their convoys had been torn apart by warships faster and deadlier than any they had known. The council chambers shook with arguments, every alien voice raised in panic, some demanding an immediate war to crush the humans before they grew stronger, others insisting that such a war might already be lost. For the first time in generations, the council was divided and afraid. Across the empires, people whispered in their markets, in their homes, in their stations, asking the same question. If humanity had survived exile and built an empire in silence, what else had they built? What other weapons hid in the shadows? What other horrors waited to be unleashed? Traders refused to travel near the dark systems. Pirates fled from routes they once controlled, and entire sectors began to tremble as if an invisible hand had taken hold of the stars. Humanity had not yet declared war, but the fear of war was already choking the galaxy. And still the Shadow Empire remained silent, watching, waiting, preparing. Inside the Empire, the people stood proud, their hearts burning with a fire that had been denied for centuries. For generations they had lived as ghosts, hiding, starving, struggling to survive, but now the galaxy finally trembled at their name. It was not revenge yet, not full return, but it was power, and it was proof that they were no longer forgotten. Admiral Kalen gathered her generals and commanders in the great war chamber, carved into the heart of a hollow moon. Around her stood men and women who had been born in exile, who had grown up in hunger and fear, but now stood as leaders of fleets, masters of weapons that could turn battles in moments. Kalen spoke with a voice that echoed through the chamber, strong despite her years. The galaxy trembles, but we must not mistake fear for victory. Fear is only the beginning. They know we are alive, but they do not yet know what we are. Let them tremble. Let them argue. Let them fight each other in panic. And while they do, we will grow stronger still. Her words were met with silence, not from doubt, but from belief. A belief so deep it burned in every soldier's eyes. They were not only exiles anymore. They were not only survivors. They were builders of an empire the galaxy had never seen. And yet, Kalen was right. Fear was not enough. To win their place in the galaxy, they would need more than shadows. They would need war. The Council, desperate to show strength, called upon its greatest fleets. From every empire, ships were gathered, tens of thousands of warships bound together, under a single banner. It was the largest fleet assembled in centuries, meant to remind the galaxy of the Council's dominance, meant to crush the whispers of humanity before they grew louder. The fleet moved toward the dark systems, its admirals confident, its soldiers eager, But beneath their bravado was fear. They remembered the stories of fleets destroyed without warning, of weapons no shield could block, of humans who fought like ghosts. And still they went, because the Council demanded it. The Shadow Empire saw them coming. Hidden scouts tracked every movement, every formation, every weakness. For years the humans had studied the Council's fleets, and now at last they had a chance to test their preparations. The human commanders debated what to do. Some argued they should remain hidden, let the massive fleet search and find nothing, let its size break under the weight of fear. Others urged a strike, a blow so devastating it would shake the galaxy to its core. Admiral Kalen listened to all voices, and then she made her choice. "We will not face them openly, not yet, but we will show them a glimpse of their fate. We will strike, and then we will vanish. And in their fear, they will destroy themselves." The plan was set. As the Council fleet entered the edge of human space, the trap was sprung. From the silence of asteroid belts and gas clouds, human ships rose, striking in lightning-fast raids. They targeted supply ships, communication relays, fuel carriers, every weak point in the massive armada. Council ships fell into confusion, their formations breaking, their admirals shouting orders that came too late. The humans did not stay to fight. They struck, they killed, and they disappeared, leaving nothing but wreckage and terror behind. Again and again they struck, until the Council fleet was bleeding and exhausted, its strength broken not by numbers but by fear. And then, as suddenly as it had begun, the humans vanished, retreating into the shadows. The Council fleet limped back, its ships battered, its soldiers shaken. They had not even faced the full might of the Shadow Empire. And yet they had been humbled. When they returned, their reports filled the Council chambers with horror. "Their ships are invisible," one admiral cried. "Their weapons cut through." "Everything!" another shouted. "We cannot see them! We cannot track them! We cannot fight them!" The galaxy trembled even more. Panic spread. Empires turned on each other, blaming one another for the rise of humanity, fearing alliances and betrayals. In the markets, prices soared. In the streets, riots began. And in the Council chambers, fear drowned reason. Humanity had not conquered a single world, but already they had conquered the galaxy's mind. They had become a shadow that haunted every star. Within the Shadow Empire, Kalen stood at the center of it all, watching as the galaxy tore itself, apart in terror. Her commanders asked if the time had come to strike openly, to march fleets into the heart of the Council and claim their place. But Kalen shook her head. "Not yet," she said. "Fear is a weapon, and we have only begun to wield it. Let them tremble, let them weaken themselves, and when they are weakest, when they can no longer stand, then we will return." And so, humanity waited once more. Not in silence, but in shadow, their presence undeniable, their power terrifying. The galaxy trembled, but the storm had not yet broken. The Shadow Empire was patient, and when the storm came, it would not be a glimpse. It would be war. The galaxy had entered a strange and terrifying age, an age where the enemy was not seen but always felt, where fleets sailed in fear of shadows, where empires looked to the dark with dread. Humanity had not yet declared war openly, but their actions had become war all the same. Convoys that once crossed the stars freely now vanished, their wreckage found drifting with marks of weapons no one recognized. Patrol fleets sent to secure border systems returned broken or did not return at all. Entire colonies whispered of seeing ghost ships that appeared and disappeared in silence, leaving only ruin in their wake. The Council called it piracy, sabotage, accidents, but the people knew better. They called it the return of the exiles, and every empire, whether they admitted it or not, began to live in fear of that name. Yet the Shadow Empire did not act without purpose. Each strike was chosen, each battle carefully crafted, not for conquest but for pressure, for fear, for the slow and steady unraveling of the Council's unity. Human fleets did not waste time on great battles. They chose targets that mattered most: supply lines, fuel depots, communication networks, intelligence hubs. With every strike, the Council grew weaker, its great fleet bleeding without ever facing an enemy head-on. The war was being fought in shadows, and in shadows humanity was strongest. Admiral Kalen watched this unfold with cold eyes, her heart heavy, but her will unshaken. She had lived through the exile. She had seen her people starve. She had buried friends who died forgotten, and now she had sworn that the galaxy would never again look down upon humanity. To her, every strike was not only strategy, it was justice. Justice for the forgotten, justice for the exiled. Her commanders carried out her orders with precision, and soon the galaxy began to crumble beneath the weight of unseen war. The council chambers turned into a furnace of rage and panic. Alien leaders screamed at one another, accusing each other of weakness, betrayal, or cowardice. Old rivalries reawakened, old grudges returned, and in the chaos, the unity of the council began to crack. Some worlds began to whisper of leaving the council altogether, fearing that staying tied to its failures would doom them. Others argued for peace, for negotiation with the humans, but their voices were drowned out by the roar of pride and fear. No empire wished to admit weakness. No empire wished to bow to exiles. And so, the council chose the only path it knew: more fleets, more armies, more war. But more war meant more weakness, for every time they moved, humanity struck. When fleets were gathered, their supplies were destroyed. When armies were deployed, their transports were cut down. When planets cried for aid, reinforcements were delayed or vanished. And through it all, the Shadow Empire grew stronger. Their fleets, once small, now numbered in the thousands, each ship a ghostly weapon of precision and fire. Their soldiers, hardened by years of training and hunger, fought like no alien had ever seen, fearless, relentless, bound by unity that no empire could match. For in the Shadow Empire there were no divisions, no rivalries, no corruption. Humanity had learned from its suffering, and suffering had made them unbreakable. Still, Kalen knew that shadows could not win forever. Fear could bleed an enemy, but only war could break them. And so she began to plan something greater, something bold, something that would end whispers and begin truth. Her target was not a convoy, not a patrol, but a council stronghold itself, one of their proudest stations, a symbol of their dominance in the stars. If that station fell, the galaxy would know that the exiles had not only survived, but had returned as conquerors. The plan was dangerous, but it was necessary. Kalen's commanders prepared their fleets, their soldiers, their weapons, knowing that once this strike began, there would be no more hiding. Humanity would no longer be a rumor. They would be a storm. And while Kalen sharpened her empire's blade, the galaxy was already tearing itself apart. Civil unrest spread on Council. Worlds, protests erupted, and whispers of rebellion grew louder. Ordinary people, tired of living in fear, began to see the Council as weak. And in their fear, some even began to hope that perhaps the humans would bring a new order, a stronger one. The Council tried to silence such whispers, but the more they tried, the louder the whispers became. It was as if the galaxy itself was waiting for a shift, waiting for the moment when the old order would collapse and the new would rise. And in the darkness, Kalen prepared to give the galaxy exactly that. Her fleets gathered in silence, their black hulls hidden in the shadows of dead worlds, their weapons humming in readiness. Her soldiers stood in ranks, their eyes burning, with the fire of vengeance, their oaths echoing in their hearts. They were not afraid. They were eager. They had waited too long, and now the time was near. As the Council scrambled, as the galaxy trembled, the Shadow Empire readied its hand. The war in shadows had already broken the balance. But what came next would break the galaxy. Humanity was no longer forgotten. Humanity was no longer exiled. Humanity was no longer silent. Soon the stars themselves would burn with their return, and nothing could stop it. The galaxy stood on the edge of collapse, its rulers desperate, its people terrified, its fleets scattered and bleeding from wounds they could not see. For years, the Council had ruled with strength, its voice law across the stars, its fleets, the sharp edge of order, but now that power was unraveling. Humanity, the forgotten exiles, had returned with a shadow empire that struck from darkness, never seen, never caught. And each strike tore at the fabric of Council rule. Worlds no longer trusted their protectors. Soldiers no longer believed in their commanders, and whispers of rebellion grew louder with every cycle. The Council chamber itself had become a battlefield of words filled with shouting and fear. Some demanded the full destruction of the humans at any cost. Others urged peace. Others turned their suspicions inward, accusing their rivals of helping the humans in secret. Unity was gone, and without unity, the Council was breaking. Yet still, the Shadow Empire waited, watching with patient eyes. Admiral Kalen knew the galaxy was at its weakest, but she also knew that one more strike, one single devastating blow, could shatter it completely. That strike was the Council's great fortress station, a structure the size of a moon, armed with weapons equal to fleets, a station that had never fallen in all history. To the galaxy, it was a symbol of power, proof that the Council could not be challenged. To Kalen, it was the perfect target. Its fall would not only weaken the Council's military, but also crush its image forever. If that fortress fell, every world would know the truth. The old order was finished, and humanity had returned to claim the stars. The plan was dangerous, almost impossible. But Kalen was not afraid of impossible. Her commanders prepared in silence, their fleets gathering in hidden orbits, their soldiers ready for war. They would not face the fortress with brute force, for no fleet could win that way. Instead, they would use the shadows that had carried them this far. Infiltration. Teams were chosen. Elite soldiers born in exile, trained in silence, hardened by war. Their mission was simple in words, but deadly in reality. They would enter the fortress, disable its defenses, and open the way for the Shadow Empire's fleets. For days, the teams prepared, memorizing every detail, every path, every risk. They knew most of them would not return, but none hesitated. For this mission was more than war. It was destiny. The attack began under the cover of silence. A Council patrol near the fortress vanished without a trace, its ship swallowed by the dark. Moments later, Shadow Empire infiltration ships slipped through the chaos, hiding their signals, weaving through the fortress's outer defenses. Inside the fortress, life continued as normal. Its officers proud, its soldiers confident, none imagining that death was already inside their walls. The human teams moved like ghosts, cutting through security, planting charges, hacking systems. Alarms did not sound, for by the time one guard realized the danger, his life was already gone. Slowly, carefully, the fortress's defenses began to fail. Turrets went silent. Shield generators flickered. Communication towers went dark. And then, when the time was right, Kalen gave the order. From the shadows of space, the fleets of the Shadow Empire rose. Thousands of black ships emerged. From the void, their weapons alive with burning light, their engines shaking the silence. For a heartbeat, the fortress still stood proud, its commanders shouting for battle, its fleets rushing to defend it. But then the truth became clear. The fortress was already bleeding from within. Human sabotage had cut its power, crippled. Its defenses blinded its eyes. When the Shadow Empire's fleets struck, they struck like a storm against broken walls. The battle was unlike anything the galaxy had seen. The fortress unleashed its fire, destroying dozens of human ships, but for every human ship that fell, 10 more pressed forward. Infiltration teams inside detonated charges, blowing apart reactors and weapons. Fires burned through the fortress. Explosions tore its hull, and the proud symbol of the Council began to fall piece by piece. Council fleets fought desperately, but their formations shattered, their commanders panicked, and the humans struck with precision and unity. It was not only victory, it was domination. And then, with a final explosion that shook the stars, the fortress split apart, its pieces burning into the void. The unthinkable had happened. The fortress that had never fallen, the symbol of Council power, was gone. Silence fell over the battlefield as Council survivors fled, carrying with them the terrible truth that the Shadow Empire had broken the unbreakable. Across the galaxy, the news spread like fire. Worlds that had doubted no longer doubted. Soldiers who had fought no longer believed. Ordinary people who had once trusted the Council now saw them as weak, and in their fear they began to look toward the humans. The galaxy had reached the breaking point. The Council tried to hide the truth, but it was too late. Every whisper, every rumor, every terrified voice carried the story. The fortress was gone, destroyed by the exiles they had once cast out. Riots erupted on Council worlds, rebellions sparked, entire sectors declared independence. The old order was crumbling, and nothing could stop it. Within the Shadow Empire, Admiral Kalen stood in silence, watching the flames of the fortress burn across her screens. Her soldiers cheered, her people wept with pride, but Kalen did not smile. She knew this victory was only the beginning. The galaxy was breaking, but broken things were dangerous, unpredictable, wild. Now the Council would fight with desperation. Now the empires would turn on one another. Now the true war would begin. Humanity had brought the galaxy to the breaking point, but what came next would decide everything. Would the Shadow Empire rise to rule the stars, or would the galaxy drown in fire? Kalen turned to her commanders, her voice steady, her eyes hard. We have struck, and the galaxy shakes, but the storm is not over. It is only beginning. Prepare the fleets. Prepare the armies. The final return is near. And with those words, the Shadow Empire moved toward its destiny, as the galaxy, trembling and broken, stood on the edge of the greatest war it had ever known. The stars burned with war as the galaxy descended into chaos, the Council shattered by fear, its fleets broken, its power crumbling. Worlds rose in rebellion, old rivals seized the chance to strike, and through it all, one truth echoed louder than any other. The humans had returned and nothing would ever be the same. From the shadows, the exiled had risen, and now they no longer hid. Their empire stretched across forgotten systems, their fleets filled the void, their armies stood ready for conquest. For years they had struck from darkness, bleeding the Council, piece by piece. But now the time for shadows was ending. Now was the time for truth, the time for fire, the time for humanity's final return to the galaxy that had once cast them out. Admiral Kalen stood before her fleets, her voice carried across thousands of ships, her words heavy with the weight of history. She reminded them of exile, of hunger, of pain, of the centuries when the galaxy had abandoned them, leaving humanity to die in the cold. She reminded them of their survival, their unity, their rise from nothing into an empire that stood unbroken. The galaxy thought us weak, she said, her eyes sharp as blades, but today they will see our strength. Today we return not as beggars, not as exiles, but as rulers. The stars belong to us, and we will take them. Her words lit a fire in every heart, and when her speech ended, the fleets roared as one, a sound that shook the void itself. The Shadow Empire was no longer a secret. It was a storm, and it was ready to sweep across the galaxy. The Council, desperate and afraid, gathered its remaining fleets. Every empire still loyal to its banner sent ships, armies, weapons, anything to hold back the human tide. They called it the final stand, a gathering of every strength left to them, one last desperate attempt to stop the exiles before all was lost. The battlefield would be the Karen Expanse, a vast and empty stretch of space chosen by the Council as the place where humanity would finally be crushed. But Kaelin knew it would not be humanity that was crushed. She knew it would be the Council that would die there. The fleets of the Shadow Empire arrived in silence, their black ships filling the expanse, their weapons glowing with deadly light. Before them stood the Council's armada, the largest fleet ever assembled, stretching from star to star, a wall of steel and fire. For a moment, the galaxy held its breath. The exiles and their executioners faced each other at last. History, balanced on the edge of a blade. Then the silence shattered, and the War of Destiny began. The Council fleet surged forward, its weapons tearing through space, its ships firing in endless waves. But the humans did not break. Their formations were perfect. Their ships moved as one, their weapons struck with deadly precision. Where the Council threw numbers, the Shadow Empire answered with unity. Where the Council fought with desperation, the humans fought with purpose. The battle raged for hours, fleets colliding, ships burning, worlds trembling from the shockwaves of war. The void itself became fire as thousands of ships were torn apart, their wreckage drifting like broken bones. But slowly, surely, the tide turned. The Council's armada, vast and mighty, began to falter. Commanders disagreed, fleets broke formation, rival empires within the Council argued even as they fought, and every weakness, every fracture was seized by the humans. Kaelin's fleets cut through their enemies like a blade through glass, striking at the heart of the armada, tearing apart its command ships, silencing its leaders. One by one, Council fleets fell, some destroyed, some fleeing in panic, some even surrendering to the humans. The wall of steel and fire collapsed, and the storm of humanity swept through the expanse. By the time the battle ended, the Council fleet was no more. The greatest armada the galaxy had ever seen lay broken, its wreckage burning in the void, its survivors scattered and leaderless. The Council itself was finished. Its fortress worlds, once untouchable, now stood vulnerable, its authority shattered, beyond repair. Across the stars, rebellion erupted into full war, empires broke away, and the old order collapsed. And into that collapse stepped the Shadow Empire. World by world, system by system, humanity's fleets arrived, not as raiders, but as rulers. Some worlds resisted and were crushed. Others surrendered and were welcomed. Many, tired of the Council's weakness, embraced the humans, seeing in them not conquerors but saviors, a new power that could bring order where the old had failed. Within months, the Shadow Empire spread across the galaxy, its banners flying over worlds that had once spit upon humanity's name. For the first time in history, humans stood as masters of the stars. And yet, Admiral Kaelin did not rejoice. She stood in the great command chamber of the new capital, staring out at the burning galaxy, her heart heavy. She had won, yes, but victory came with a price. Billions were dead, entire fleets gone, and the galaxy trembled in ruins. The Shadow Empire had returned, but what kind of galaxy would they inherit? A broken one, scarred by fire. Still, Kaelin knew this truth. Better, a broken galaxy ruled by the just than a stable one ruled by the cruel. And she believed, deep in her heart, that humanity would not repeat the mistakes of the Council. They had been forgotten once, exiled once, abandoned once. They knew the pain of being powerless, and perhaps that would make them wiser rulers. Perhaps. As the fleets of humanity spread to secure their new dominion, as alien worlds bent the knee, as the old Council faded into dust, one truth echoed across the stars. Humanity had returned, and their return had shaken the galaxy forever. The exiles were exiles no longer. They were the rulers of the stars. They had endured the cold of abandonment, the hunger of exile, the silence of shadows, and from all that suffering they had built an empire that no one could deny. Now the galaxy belonged to them. And in the silence after war, as the stars burned with the fires of fallen empires, a single phrase was whispered across every world, from the smallest colony to the grandest capital. The exiles have returned. Humanity rules the stars. And with that, the age of exile ended and the age of humanity began.